So,
All right. Well, looks like we should be about ready to go play round number one. This is going to be David Williams against Rich Shay. Dave is currently the only player on 1 and 6, but there is a three-way tie at 2 and 5 and a couple players at 3-4. So a win here, he can get himself into tiebreaker scenarios and at least get back to the point where he controls his own destiny. But a loss here, and he's going to need, more than a little bit of help even to get into a tiebreaker match. His Bugsteel deck is pretty interesting. Deathrite Shaman is the only creature in here. It's got Abrupt Decays. It's got, essentially, this is a Landstill deck, just with extra colors, the Deathrites and the Abrupt Decays. So, I mean, Landstill's been around for a while. I haven't seen a lot of his bug-flavored version of the deck, but, I mean, it certainly gives him some interesting angles to attack from and can throw an opponent off who maybe doesn't understand exactly what he's playing against.
Which, after round one, isn't going to be the case, but still, he's got 4 Abrupt Decay against Oath of Druids deck and Crucible of Worlds plus Wasteland. He's got a lot of action there. True. Plus double Caracas in the sideboard. Nice. That's a straight up anti-Oath card too. It just bounces Griselbrand.
It's pretty nice. Yeah, I actually sideboarded Waterfront Bouncers this set out of fear of Oath.
Yeah,
Rich's deck, it's an Oath version. He calls it Fenton Oath. Greg Fenton gave him the list. It does have the 3 show and tells, not quite the Boseiju or the Omniscience that we saw from Kai and Luis last set, but the show and tells definitely give it the ability to win, even if there's, say, a Grafdigger's Cage in play or your Oath has been Abrupt Decayed away. So, yeah, I mean, it's an Oath of Druids deck. It's trying to control the game and trying to get giant Griselbrands into play. From there, this actually has a little more dedicated kill cards than maybe some Oath decks would have. It's got Vault Key, it's got Yawgmoth's Will. So once the Oath is down, there's a lot that it can do. You just got to get it down and activated through Abrupt Decay.
And Rich does have double Misdirection. That's 1 or 2 more than most. And Misdirection is one of the few cards that can actually interact with Abrupt Decay.
Yeah, that's a great point. All right, let's see what happens. Rich has turn 1 Oath off an Orchard. That's not bad.
Dave has a hand of 4 colorless lands.
And a Force of Will. And that Force of Will can actually stop the Oath here, yeah?
Yeah, well, yeah. For sure, Dave's hand is keepable, especially since if he doesn't have to Oath turn or Force turn 1, he's got Library, but waste, Library, Deathrite Shaman, double blue card. It is funny. Regardless of what ends up happening, that is a funny opening hand.
Yeah, fair enough. It would have been turn 1 Library draw would have been nice, but yeah, he obviously has to Force a Will the Oath here.
Yeah, I think you have to force it. Assuming Dave doesn't draw a land in order to play Deathrite, I kind of like Wastelanding too. Yep. You've got all these Wastelands and you're not doing anything. You might as well slow your opponent down.
Agreed.
Like, building up to Library is not a really realistic plan here.
All right, waste 1 Forbidden Orchard. Rich is kind of out of gas here.
I don't love the second card he's got in his hand, Memory's Journey. I know what it is. It's a hedge against decking yourself with Griselbrand. Yep. Or with Oath, rather, because it's, 1 in the blue, target player shuffles 3 cards from a graveyard into their deck, flashback for a green, so even if you mill it, you get to shuffle, but I think you're going to lose more games to drawing that card than you are to getting decked or running out of kill conditions. So
yeah, I mean, the nice part is at least if you have it in your deck, if you ever need it, it's going to be in the graveyard where you can flash it back. But True. I'm with you. I tend not to run one of my Oath decks either, especially with 3 Griselbrands. It just seems like it wouldn't come up as much.
I mean, we weren't running one with two targets, though. Emrakul does let you reshuffle if it needed. I think in Kai's first round, he actually had a line where he could have discarded Emrakul to reshuffle and potentially won. But yeah, so I don't like Memory's Journey. Here it's kind of punishing Rich because he has it in his hand. Is unable to do anything.
Agreed. All right. David did draw the Bayou, but Deathrite Shaman ran into a mental misstep, and neither player's got much going on. Rich has added a show and tell to his hand, but he's got nothing to show down.
Well, one good thing for Rich, well, besides drawing the Dig Through Time, which he can actually cast off Mana Crypt plus Orchard plus his lands, is that if he draws or finds a Griselbrand, Dave has no defense to that. Dave does have an Abrupt Decay if he draws another mana source, but Dave can't deal with show and tell right now, and is not actually that close to being able to either.
There's half of Mana Drain's blue mana. The other half is kind of in his graveyard in the form of Deathrite Shaman, right?
It is, and again, I've got to point out, Bayou, Library of Alexandria, Wasteland Mana Drain is something.
Yeah, and Rich actually slow-rolled that Forbidden Orchard. He chose not to play a land because he didn't want to expose the second blue mana to the Wastelands that he didn't know Dave had, but he had to worry Dave might have in his hand. Pretty well played.
And he knew Dave had four copies total. So yeah, that definitely a good play. Rich being forced to dig now because of the wasteland, but Dave, of course, being unable to stop it here.
Pretty much.
So Rich can leave the Oath in the graveyard in case of Yawgmoth's Will, and Rich only has the one Delve card in his deck, so he doesn't really need to wait. Plus, I guess with Memory's Journey, at some point, maybe you just fire off the value Memory's Journey, just to slightly increase the percentage of good cards in your deck.
Have another dig through time in there. That'd be great, right? It's not doing much in his hand. Oh, wow. So he found the Griselbrand to go with Show and Tell.
Last card he wants is just a Force of Will or Misdirection.
Yep. Probably doesn't need it, but that's what he's looking for, I'm sure.
Yeah. Oh, the second Show and Tell is good too because, yeah, it's not like Rich wastes the Show and Tell if it gets countered, or Griselbrand rather. So if Rich plays Show and Tell, it gets countered. Next turn he just does it again.
Mana Crypt flip doesn't seem like it should matter.
No, I can't imagine.
Slow him down a bit on hitting Griselbrand, but yeah, here's Show and Tell.
And even if Dave or Rich loses like 2 Mana Crypt flips, he's still gonna be able to hit with Griselbrand and draw enough cards.
Yep. Yeah, that Show and Tell just resolves. Dave's got nothing. Now there's a 7/7 flying lifelink demon. Rich goes ahead and draws 7. Now he's got a Force of Will, a Flusterstorm, a Mental Misstep, a Sapphire, a Misty Rainforest.
Yeah, at this point you definitely don't draw again because you'll die to Mana Crypt. You can cast Thoughtseize though, being at 7 is fine, especially with Flusterstorm, Force of Will, Misstep protection here.
Yeah, there's the Thoughtseize. Takes the mana drain, sure. Abrupt Decay is not doing anything.
Yeah, Dave pretty clearly doesn't have outs here.
Yeah, I can't imagine how he stitches this together. Excuse me. And Rich Shay wins game 1. Williams just next card, next card, next card. How close was I?
Yeah, closest him to what though? The thing is, his deck, it doesn't kill very quickly. It's trying to lock your opponent out with counters and disruptions. So there's no, and that's one of the weaknesses of decks like Dave. I mean, I like Landstill decks. I'm actually playing a deck not that different right now either, but we are both definitely playing decks where you have no one Windmill Slam card. There's no one, aha, I played this, now I win the game.
Right.
Just these decks just don't function like that. They function by accumulating incremental advantages and burying your opponent under them. They don't function by drawing a Dig Through Time or a Yawgmoth's Will or Demonic Tutor and assembling some combo. So,
does sideboarding change anything here?
I think it just makes Dave's deck better. It doesn't do a whole lot other than that. Rich is pretty close to what he wants already. The interesting thing is, does Rich bring in Nature's Claim or Abrupt Decay to try to counter Engineered Plague? Seems like if you don't, you could be in trouble, but you just assume you're on the Show and Tell plan anyway.
Does Dave have cages? All right, well, let's go ahead and get down to the match.
So,
now, Ancestral into Standstill seems like a better hand for Dave.
This hand is quite good. This is the new era of Ancestral where you just kind of expect your Ancestral to get Mental Misstepped in spots like this. You're just like, I'm going to cast this.
Right.
The thing is, Rich also has double Misdirection in his deck.
And Rich also has turn 1 Show and Tell for Griselbrand.
Well, he has Force of Will backups, so he's got to be feeling pretty good about this.
That
but Dave,
insane.
Dave has uncounterable way to deal with Griselbrand. He has Caracas.
Hilarious. Still, you draw the cards. All right, so
yeah.
Rich goes Black Lotus for Show and Tell. David, I assume, is going to respond with an Ancestral Recall here, which, if you're Rich, you just let that happen?
Yeah, I would not force that. I would rather resolve Ancestral and you resolve Show and Tell.
Agreed.
I mean, you can maybe think that it's bait, and or rather, you can assume it's not bait, but and just go for it and try to counter it. But I would just let Ancestral resolve.
I would too. And Dave does not have a Force of Will, which is basically what he was fishing for. So this Show and Tell is going to resolve. Caracas comes down. David brought a Caracas to Show and Tell.
Yeah, and Rich does get to draw 7 to 14 cards here. The awkward part for Rich is that he will then have to discard some of them, so drawing 14 is a little less powerful, but this has still got to be a huge advantage for Rich, right?
Yeah, no, I think he doesn't get to win the game, but he's up 7 cards.
He is.
Pithing Needle is non-land? Or no, Pithing Needle can name a land, can't it?
Yes, it's not a Revoker, so...
Right, it's Revoker that's non-land, so Pithing Needle actually beats Caracas. Although not quite fast enough.
Though I'm sure that's why Rich brought it in. So now, though it stops Jace as well, I suppose. Dave, of course, using Caracas. Rich deciding whether he wants to draw 7. He does.
Wow. Plus 14 cards.
So this is going to be pretty tough for Dave here. Since well, Rich does have to discard down here. This is his turn 1. He gets to play on Mox, but other than that, yeah,
if he come up with a second show and tell, he could cast it right here. He did not, in fact, come up with a second show and tell. I don't think
he didn't. He has Ancestral and he has a bunch of counters. He has the Griselbrands still. He could cast a Preordain, which seems kind of reasonable, just to maybe look for an Oath or something. It looks like he's casting a Brainstorm.
He's got a fetch land, so seems pretty reasonable.
So if Dave does get another turn, Dave is going to be able to play Delta and have Mana Drain up. He can cast Standstill, or he can cast Demonic Tutor, or he can Decay the Needle, which some combination of those plays do seem reasonable. Of course, Rich has Misdirection, so he can misdirect the Decay to one of his Moxes.
And Rich came up with an Oath of Druids off that Brainstorm.
Yeah, so
I'm guessing this is reshuffle for, Tropical into Oath?
You might as well just cast the Oath. You don't even care too much if it gets countered, and you got to figure it's going to resolve because Dave didn't counter the show and tell.
Resolved.
and it makes you discard less cards, which is important. So the Oath, not an immediate threat, though. There's a key hiding around there. All right, key is interesting.
What does that do?
It's just playing a card so you don't have to discard, I guess. I mean, regardless, you need to play something, because at this point, Rich is going to have to discard. I mean, he wants to keep all his blue cards. He maybe wants to keep his Griselbrand. If he keeps Oath, he's going to want to keep Orchard. So he's clearly got a huge advantage out of this turn. Though I don't think he ended the game here.
Yeah, no, he's got to say go. He's got to discard down to 7. He put 1 Griselbrand back in his deck with the Brainstorm. He kept 1 in his hand.
But then shuffled, so he knows he's not drawing it. I imagine you've got to discard Underground Sea here.
So he discarded, so far, it looks like a Misstep and an Oath and an Underground Sea.
And if you discard all the Oaths, you could also discard the Orchard. I mean, once you get to the point where you're discarding Preordains and stuff, it looks like, okay, Rich did keep Oath Orchard with Force, Misdirection, Ancestral, Misstep. This feels pretty good for Rich.
Yes. Now, how do you play this if you're David?
Delta go, I would imagine. David did draw
Did land still?
You could play Standstill. You've got to figure that Rich is going to play something. I guess, if you play Standstill, you at least have either get 3 cards or make Rich fight over something, but I think it feels like you're going to want to go Mana Drain, back it up with Misdirection, untap and try to win the game off of Abrupt Decay, or at least not die. This is interesting. Dave drew Misdirection. You're going to want to try to misdirect this Ancestral, I'd imagine. Misdirect Ancestral, pitching Jace. Rich
Jace not Standstill?
Or you could pitch Standstill, actually. Both are... Just don't pitch the Drain, whatever you do.
Agreed.
Yeah, pitching Standstill is reasonable, too.
Rich wasn't going to cast it that turn. When's he going to cast it?
This is kind of interesting. So Rich is going to either force or misdirect back, I guess, because it doesn't cost life. If Rich pitches Misstep, then Dave's going to win this fight. If Rich doesn't, Rich is going to have to misstep his own Ancestral. If they both, go all out on this, which I kind of think you have to because you're talking about Ancestral Recall, I think that it ends up with Rich just having Oath, Griselbrand, Orchard, playing, if he draws nothing, playing Oath, and then Dave decaying it, and actually this being a real game. Dave ends up with a Jace in his hand at the end of all of this.
Well, David does point to Misdirection. He chooses Standstill as the blue card he's going to exile.
Yeah, I actually like that better. You're right. You should pitch. This game's actually going to the point where you can just cast a Jace here. So, Rich, let the Misdirection resolve. Ancestral's retargeted. Now is going to attempt to retarget it.
What's he going to pitch? Pitches the Force of Will so he can hold on to Misstep.
Yeah, so now I think Rich is going to have to misstep his own Ancestral here. It's
because
like misstep.
You expect David to go to Mana Drain this Misdirection.
I would expect Dave to do that, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, me too.
At this point, it's basically like you're misstepping Dave's Ancestral because it's just an Ancestral pointed at Dave. It doesn't matter whose hand it originated from. Yeah, this is awesome. And Dave's, despite the draw 14, Dave is fighting card for card and somehow coming out ahead here.
Pretty crazy.
Yeah, absurd actually. So it looks like Dave is deciding whether he wants to drain or not.
Yep.
I would have a really hard time not casting mana drain here.
I agree. I mean, not only is it an ancestral at stake, it's also 5 mana next turn.
It's also not an ancestral at stake. It's -1 ancestral for your opponent, +1 for you. You know,
Right.
it's like a 6-card swing. Either they're up 3 or you're up 3.
Yeah, there's no way he can let this resolve.
So Dave maybe just making sure he knows exactly what's going on. You don't want to end up like letting countering the misdirection, then realizing ancestral still pointed at Rich or something. But I think ancestral is pointed at Dave right now. So wow. So it looks like Dave let Rich ancestral. Huh. I would have certainly gone for it there. I think it's just too many cards. Rich
He was afraid. I mean, Rich still has the remnants of that 14 card hand, right? That plus 14 card hand.
Oh
Dave,
yeah, Rich has 4 cards.
He just wanted to
I
have
mean,
the
Rich
mana
has
drain
4
up for
cards, and
whatever Rich is
you
doing
know
on
they're
Rich's.
good. Yeah, I mean that's. I guess Dave, I think, was, and this is valid. We can see their hands, so it's a lot easier for us. Rich played a Voltaic Key last turn. Can you? I can imagine Dave thinking that, and this actually makes sense. I actually like Dave's play a lot more once I started thinking about this. There's a good chance that Rich has either Demonic Tutor or a Time Vault in his hand. If you mana drain there, you just lose to Time Vault Key. Whereas now Dave gets to keep up Abrupt Decay, so if Rich goes for the Vault Key plan, Dave can stop it. I think that's actually a pretty reasonable line, and it's conservative, but it makes sense. It's if the key wasn't there, I think this play was not very defensible. With the key in play already, it makes a lot more sense to me. So Dave didn't have information about Rich's hand except for that he kept the best 4 out of something like 17.
Yep. Rich goes for Oath of Druids. Dave still, if he's worried about Time Vault, has to let the Oath of Druids resolve. Plus, he's got Abrupt Decay in his hand anyway.
And Rich doesn't have an Orchard in play, so you can maybe wait on dealing with the Oath for a turn or two.
Preordain is going to resolve. Rich did find Show and Tell with his draw step.
And Time Walk.
Wow. And Orchard.
So it's kind of interesting. Do you manage in the Time Walk here? It gives Rich so much mana if Time Walk resolves, and Dave is kind of choked on mana himself. If you can't cast Jace and leave Wasteland up, though of course
he has to Abrupt Decay Oath.
Yeah, he could count on a Time Walk or he could decay the Oath. He's got to do one of the two though. Yeah. That Polluted Delta is getting sacrificed at some point. Though, Oath actually is not, if you, maybe you don't Abrupt Decay the Oath. That actually might be bad. You could Abrupt Decay the Needle. Oath can happen and you can just keep bouncing Griselbrand.
Cute.
That's because killing the Needle stops all the Oaths. Rich could very plausibly have a second Oath in his hand. Or a third Oath, I guess, because he discarded one.
That's a good point.
Yeah. This is a hard game to play from Dave's side. It's a lot easier for us to say what we do because again we know what's going on, but from Dave's side of the board, he's got to be in kind of like mortal fear of Vault Key. Though right now he's gonna have to be vulnerable to it because he's gotta. Well, that's actually not true. He can let Griselbrand come into play and wait till end of turn to kill the Needle. He doesn't even need to bounce it right away. It's not like Griselbrand can attack him.
If his plan is to Abrupt Decay the Needle, then he can let the Oath resolve. And that does seem like a good plan, especially the part where it lets him hold up mana drain all the way through Rich's main phase.
Yeah, which is what he's been trying to do the whole time. Dave's playing this game on challenge level impossible, which is holding mana drain up the entire time, despite Rich drawing 14 and having like 7 mana to Dave's 3. He's trying to win the game while keeping drain up the whole time. And Rich didn't even
it came to Oath up, and now it's there. Dave gets. Is that rewarded?
It's got to be, right? And now the question is, do you manage in here or do you just go for the Abrupt Decay? The Abrupt Decay is much safer. It would line up with what Dave has been doing so far, is to use Abrupt Decay, though then there's that Oath in play and you're in danger of that, so.
Okay, yeah, he lets it resolve because he's going to Abrupt Decay. But now he doesn't really have a plan for fighting the Oath.
Well, he's got Demonic Tutor, and he's got it because there's not a Griselbrand in play right now. Dave has a one-turn window. He can Demonic Tutor for another Abrupt Decay, pass the turn. Rich gets a Griselbrand into play. Dave untaps, decays the Needle.
Wow. So everybody out there who would have mana drained that misdirection and drawn 6 cards would have lost the game to Vault Key right here.
Potentially, you have to look at because Rich drew an extra 3, so maybe Rich wouldn't have found all this.
And Dave would have had might have found a Force of Will.
Correct. But Dave did play in a way that made him less likely to lose to Time Vault. He maybe more likely to lose to other stuff, but less likely to lose to Time Vault for sure.
You still would have mana drained?
Yeah, I probably would have mana drained.
So much value, 6 cards.
It's not even just the value. I think part of it is that I feel like I'm losing that game even if my plan works out and I stop Vault Key. I feel like I'm still losing the game because I'm down so many cards, and Rich has so much mana that I would rather take a riskier play to win the game. That being said, maybe Dave correctly assessed that he has enough gas that he could fight through what Rich has, because a lot of what Rich needs to keep is 2-card combos that if one card's disrupted, the other one's dead. So that is very interesting.
Yeah, Dave would not have actually gotten to draw cards because that Ancestral would have been misstepped, but still,
True.
Rich would have gotten less.
So, Dave, Dave's play with this deck has impressed me a lot. I just wish his deck was a little bit better. I was talking to Dave. He basically wishes he had cut a Mishra's Factory for another colored land and then maybe made like one other change or something, because that would be a very, very different deck. It would just have less colorless mana draws, which I see as the biggest weakness. A lot of the other stuff he's doing is really on point, like Engineered Plagues and Abrupt Decays were really good for the decks he ended up playing against. So had Dave had a little bit more of that, I think he would have been in great shape.
All right, well, David goes for Jace the Mind Sculptor, and it resolves. So he's not holding up mana drain. He's not demonic tutoring for anything, but he does have Jace on the board.
And Jace operates the same as Caracas, because Rich can get out of Griselbrand. Dave can then just Jace it. With Time Walk and Time Vault both gone, Rich needs to hit Yawgmoth's Will to take an extra turn. Otherwise, Rich can't take an extra turn. He can get a Griselbrand in play, but he can't do much past that. If Dave wins this game, it is absurd, by the way. Rich drew 14 cards on turn 1.
I was there. It was pretty crazy. These Spirit tokens are going to end the game without too much longer, too. Rich is at 4.
Yeah.
All right, Rich activates Oath of Druids. Here comes Griselbrand.
And he didn't mill Yawgmoth's Will, which is one of the most important cards, but Rich's hand is 6 blanks right now. None of Rich's cards do anything. He can cast Show and Tell for a second Griselbrand. He's got Mental Misstep and Decay with no targets, and he's got a Mana Crypt Will at 4 life. Whereas Dave can just untap, Jace away the Griselbrand, and have mana drain up. Potentially, if you want to take a Demonic Tutor, but I don't even think you need to do that. I think you can just keep drain up.
Yeah, I mean, DT for Abrupt Decay on Needle has got to be at least a little tempting, but taking your guard down from mana drain.
At this point, the only card you lose to is Yawgmoth's Will, I think. Though Dave could also DT for Force of Will and just play Standstill.
Sure. That's what he's going to do.
Seems like a very reasonable play. Though Rich does have the Abrupt Decay to kill the Standstill if he wants to. Not a play I'd recommend, but he could do that.
Still triggers it. Is Dave actually going to win this game?
He's a huge favorite right now.
He's just ahead now. Way ahead. He's got Jace and Standstill and a creature, and his opponent's on 3.
Yeah, and double Griselbrand in hand.
Wow.
Yeah. I would certainly be sad to see Dave go. I also think his commentary has been incredibly on point.
Oh, totally agree.
I actually asked Dave if he would ever think about doing going for more commentary gigs, but when he flies to a tournament, he wants to play in them, is what he said. So,
yeah, that makes sense.
We'll see if that develops or not. But his VSL commentary has been truly excellent. And right now, Dave really has the game under lockdown. He can't play any spells, but he's got counter magic.
Ooh, there's a sweet one.
I cast that card against Bob, who's playing Oath, in my very first VSL match of VSL, actually. Stanza with Jason play is pretty nice, especially when you've got Drain, Force, Spell Pierce.
Unbelievable. Dave Williams is going to win this game.
Yeah, I honestly don't know if Rich has outs right now. Rich can... I mean, his Yawgmoth's Will is the card he needs to resolve to win, but how is he going to resolve it? Dave can go Drain, Force.
And oh, by the way, draw 3 cards just because Rich had the temerity to try casting a spell.
Exactly.
This is nuts.
It's really incredible. Urkel's Recall.
That doesn't do anything here.
Certainly not. You can reset the needle on Jace if you want. You can, but you're still not beating Caracas at that point. So.
Right.
So Rich sees his fate. It's that spirit token. It's going to march in. And Rich can't abrupt decay it and force Dave to find a Mishra's Factory, but it's not really a winning play.
I mean, he probably has to pretty soon, right?
Yeah, he literally has to in one turn. He can't wait one more turn from now, but if you really want to. But
yeah, but then you can never crack a fetch land. You can never force a will.
Yeah.
Seems like it's probably time to abrupt decay the spirit token. Let Dave draw 3 from the standstill.
Ifro asks, how tilted do you think Dave was when Rich discarded Force of Will to hand size and Dave had a decay, a drain, and no other cards? It's like, well, Dave couldn't have been happy about that. But honestly, these are the best kind of games from Dave's side, right? You faced an overwhelming advantage and you managed to win the game, and that's just super satisfying. That's part of why you play Magic is when you're mana screwed stuck on 2 lands and then you somehow claw your way out of it and manage to win a super tight game. Those are just the best games. And this is maybe Dave wasn't mana screwed. He was definitely Griselbrand screwed because Rich had all the Griselbrands. So, and these are the kind of games that are really impressive. I don't even think Rich misevaluated what he was supposed to be doing. It's just Dave's threats or answers are just so tailor-made for this matchup. Just Dave has a bunch of uncounterable ways to deal with Rich's threats. Caracas and Abrupt Decay, neither of which can be countered, is just super strong.
Yeah, Rich forced to trigger the standstill. Waits for Dave's end step, so Dave's going to have to discard some of these cards. Kills the token.
It would be funny if it was Dave's turn to discard the Force of Will. Of course, he's going to keep all the Force of Wills here, but the point remains that Dave has more counters than Rich has cards.
Discards the land, 2 wastelands, and a polluted delta. Does he go for end step Notion Thief?
Yeah, it's a win condition, and it's not like this is match 1 where I would if this was match 1, if I were Dave, I might not play the Notion Thief because I think I'm going to win the game and I don't want to show Notion Thief. But Rich has their deck list. He knows Notion Thief is a card.
Yeah, and Rich looks at his hand, and none of those cards deal with Notion Thief. Yeah. Notion Thief is attacks for the win. Unbelievable. David Williams, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, that was it. That makes a short list of games. I think if you were to do like a VSL highlight reel, that game was pretty incredible.
You want to talk about back against the wall too? He's facing elimination from the whole league if he loses that game.
Yeah. How does Dave feel? He's 1-6. He's playing his opponent resolved Griselbrand and drew 14, and Dave's just like down a game, and Dave's just like, if I lose this, I don't get to play next league. There's a really good chance of that, and it's just. Yeah, and he just had to play. He could not change the way he played based on that information, which is great. I mean, you should play the same when you're locked for top 8 as when you're not, but...
Hats off to you, sir. David Williams. Win or lose game 3. That's one we're going to remember for a while, I think. All right. Rich has an Oath but no Orchard, a Griselbrand but no Show and Tell. Not a great hand. Dave has Force of Will.
Rich's hand is still pretty explosive.
It's good. Yeah, it's good. It's just it's missing bits.
Yeah,
wow,
Rich
is going to sack the Lotus for blue mana and trust that Preordained finds him something to do.
Yeah, this is an aggressive play by Rich. He's looking for Forbidden Orchard, I guess. Though you put yourself pretty on the hook against Force of Will at this point. So Rich's 3 draws, by the way, have been turn 1 Oath Orchard, turn 1 Griselbrand Force Backup, turn 1 Oath Orchard.
Yeah, he found the Orchard, so he's now using one of those blue mana from the Lotus and the Orchard to cast Oath the Druid, which Dave has no choice but to Force a Will. His only question is whether he pitches the Drain or the Misdirection. I would say it's Misdirection, and it is.
For sure. So Dave's had to face down quite the impressive opening hands here. Though, again, Dave's deck is built for this matchup, so if you're going to choose a deck where you have to fight through that stuff, this is the deck. So if Dave had a second blue, it would be slightly more interesting whether you want to play that Delta to try to work towards mana drain. But given that he just doesn't have that reliably on turn 2, I think it's not that close that you wasteland. pretty good chance you wasteland even in the other scenario, but given that there's no second blue forthcoming, I think you absolutely have to wasteland there.
That's what he does. Spirit token chipping away. Rich is out of gas. 3 lands and a Griselbrand.
Yeah, Rich's hand is just all blanks, essentially.
He's not going to get screwed by the wastelands. That's about the only thing he's got going for him.
Yeah.
Interesting. He leads with Underground Sea instead of a fetch land, I think hoping that Dave will go down the wasteland path.
Yeah, Rich really wants both players to be taking turns off. I mean, Dave's attacking with the token, but that's not that relevant.
Yeah, whatever.
Rich would rather be both players be just doing nothing, getting time walked by wastelands. and then Griselbrand shows up. You know, that's one of the disadvantages of playing Oath. I played this deck last time, and honestly, it has the worst top decks in the world. You draw Omniscience, you draw Emrakul, you draw Griselbrand, you draw Oath of Druids, you draw Forbidden Orchard, you draw all these cards that need other cards to be good, and that's why a deck like the Young Pyromancer decks has no dead draws. Is one of the advantages. But here, Rich has drawn his second Griselbrand, and Dave drew a Grafdigger's Cage, which won't stop show and tell. Right now, Dave's got he's completely vulnerable to show and tell.
Yeah, he needs a blue mana, and Rich or Rich to not draw one.
It's got to be pretty tense for Dave seeing that third land, but then the Time Vault comes down, and Dave has to be feeling pretty good because if Rich had a show and tell, you cast it. Dave's covered on Oath, and he's covered on Key because he's got Mental Misstep.
Yep. Interesting. Wasteland, maybe?
Yeah, it's not clear whether Wasteland is better than just attacking with Mishra's Factory right now. Though I guess you could just do both. You just Wasteland and attack with Mishra's Factory.
I think he's hesitant to crack the Polluted Delta because he doesn't want to thin the blue sources out of his deck.
Yeah, but the 2 damage is really big here. You're talking about potentially an extra turn.
Sure. And he goes with your play.
Well, there's two races going on. One is Dave's just straight up 3 points of damage a turn versus Rich drawing show and tell. The second is Dave racing to draw blue mana before Rich draws show and tell. Given those 2 races are both in favor of Dave right now, I think that Dave's in a pretty good spot. The blue mana is a little easier, but
still no blue mana.
Yeah, he's got Bayou Mishra's Factory chucking away.
He's got the more key protection. I mean, Rich had drawn a misstep, but Dave now has a second misstep, so he'll win the fight over a Voltaic key.
Yeah, it would be great for Dave if Rich drew key here.
Mm-hmm. Now, no longer great for Dave.
No longer great. Yes. And now Dave's got to be feeling great.
Mana Drain now online. David Williams is going to win this match.
Yeah, Rich has a few short draw steps before Dave mana drains his way out of this.
But he needs 2 cards. There's no card that wins it for him here.
Yeah. Key doesn't do it. DT doesn't do it. There's no one card that does it. Rich needs 2 successive good draw steps. And because of...
stand still.
Oh, Rich just took an extra turn here. He just let Time Vault untap. So
wow.
Rich figured he doesn't have very many draw steps. This doesn't change the actual clock in terms of how many draw steps he gets, but it does let him deploy 2 threats through Dave's 2 mana drains.
Yeah, it's smart.
So it makes sense. If I'm Dave here, I definitely don't play Standstill. You're not looking to draw anything else. You have everything you need. You just don't want to die.
Yep. Leave up the mana drain mana. Rich draws. Dig Through Time. That's a good one.
That's a start. I mean, you just main phase Dig Through Time. You could.
It gets mana drained, and then you tap your Time Vault.
You type your Time Vault. You hope to draw
the top of your deck. Wow. That's got to be the line, right? Dig main phase. You run it into mana drain. That's your bait, and then Time Vault and knock on the top of your deck.
Yeah, you really need the double threat, and Dig's expensive enough that you have to go for it now. Rich, I guess, is considering a slightly different play, which is pass the turn, get attacked down to 1. You can no longer use Misty Rainforest. That's gone. But then end of turn, you can use Forbidden Orchard to cast Dig, untap, draw step, tap, Time Vault, second draw step. I don't like that as much. I think that you lose out by losing your land, even though you do technically get an extra draw step, because it also gives Dave another draw step.
Exactly. Okay, so he goes for the first line that occurred to both of us. Dig Through Time main phase. Otherwise known as bait.
He's just tapping 3 for it because he figures it's not going to resolve, and he's not doing anything else this turn.
Well, he knows that if he ever gives David another turn, he will lose. So
yeah, tapping the Orchard also has no penalty.
Exactly. All right, David gets a token. He's got lethal. If he gets another turn, he has to mana drain this, right? Is he thinking about letting this resolve and then holding up mana drain for the threat? That can't be.
No, I think you got to mana drain this. Rich very clearly is on air, Giving him a chance to hit 2 is just so dangerous.
Agreed. All
All
right.
right. Here we
David's
go.
got to fade 1 draw step. Wow. 1 draw step with possibly his life on the line. His life in the league, anyway.
So if Rich draws show and tell, Rich is very much in the game.
Yes.
In fact, he's very far ahead if he draws show and tell.
Rich draws. Mental misstep.
He's a full house
David
of
survives.
missteps over Griselbrands. Wow.
Wow.
That was something.
That was insane.
Yeah, that was unbelievable.
Wow. And suddenly people start sweating, right? That puts Tom Martell is now tied for last place. Bob Maher is now tied for last place. Kai Buddha is now tied for last place. That is a huge win for David Williams. Game on.
Yeah, Dave now made it a lot more exciting in terms of who's going to get last. It's no one has breathing room who has 2 wins right now.
No, and Rich is still in the hunt too now.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Rich is now only a game above last. So
yeah, Rich and Steve both, right? I mean, they both have outs at this point. So
yeah. Steve still has a match to play. The Steve Kai match is suddenly a huge one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, my match against Tom is obviously pretty big. Whew, that was nuts.
Yeah, that was absurd.
All right. I'm going to shift gears a little bit. I'm still trying to cool down from that, but we did schedule a little bit of a mini announcement for this point of the show. Yeah, wow, what a match. So Wizards asked us to announce a little bit of information for them. Many of you guys know about the Magic Online Championship, which is coming up in May. This is the one where there's those MOX finals every month on Magic Online. Well, check out the formats they're going to be using this year. The championship is coming up in about a little under 2 months. It's going to be in May. They're going to play Vintage.
Yeah, 3 rounds of Vintage.
That's going to be awesome. 3 rounds of Vintage, 4 rounds of Modern on Friday. There's 1 draft, 4 rounds of Standard on Saturday. This is the first time these formats have been shared with the public. I know the players have been informed. The players knew this was coming, but yeah, we're happy to be the guys that get to tell you. We're going to see Vintage at the Magic Online Champs. And if you look at Sunday, we're going to see Vintage in the finals too.
Yeah,
semis are standard, but the finals is best of 3 matches, and the first match uses the Vintage decks.
Yeah, all of that's incredibly exciting. Seeing, high stakes Vintage getting played is awesome because the players have, their full incentive is to bring the best possible deck they can, and it'll be really interesting to see what these players determine that is, especially since some of them have more Vintage experience than others. I know Ole Rad plays a ton of Vintage. I've seen him on a lot of the daily events. So yeah,
I've actually got the slate of competitors queued up on as well. We can take a look at who is going to be competing in this thing. So there's 12 monthly champions. There's also the defending champion. So you see Lars Dom there. He's the defending champ. Season 2 winner, by the way, Antonio Del Moral Leon. He may not have been a super familiar name at the time he won his MOX Monthly Championship last year, but the dude just won a Pro Tour.
Yep, we've got some Pro Tour champions in the MOX this year.
Yeah, Pro Tour champions plural. You see the Season 7 winner is Ularade, the Hall of Famer. He's Holiday Cube Sealed. That's an awesome format. And I know he was actually talking to you about Vintage a little bit.
Yeah, when I was in Liverpool for the Grand Prix a couple weeks ago, he was kind of grilling me a little about what I thought about the current state of Vintage, what I thought might be good. He may have let slip that he would be playing a high stakes Vintage match in the future.
Very nice.
I gave him my thoughts on Vintage, so it'd be pretty cool to see what he ends up with.
All right, we got 8 more competitors as well. 16-person tournament. They play 14 rounds. They cut to the top 4. I'm going to be there doing some of the commentary. I know you did this commentary last year. You're not going to make it this year. But the other piece of news I want to let people know about is commentary crew for this is going to be a lot of fun, too. Marshall Sutcliffe is coming. Brian David Marshall is coming, 2 of the regulars in the circuit. But a couple of guys that we haven't seen a lot of, Eric Froelich is actually going to make the trip. So we get a Vintage expert in Efro will be in the house and doing commentary.
It's very clear that the VSL is just a farm league for getting new commentators.
Hey, whatever works. I'd love to see more of us doing more commentary. The other person, not a VSL connection, but certainly a streaming of Magic Online connection, Kenji Egashira. That is, Numat the Nummy is going to be making his coverage debut at this event. So
I look forward to that. I mean, I'm certainly going to be watching the coverage from this event, so I'll be judging you guys. But seeing what Kenji brings to the table or the booth, as it were, is going to be awesome.
yeah, no, I'm really excited about that as well. I know Kenji's actually local to Seattle. He's going to be at the show. You know, maybe get him in the booth a little, get him in the sideline reporter role a little bit. That should be a lot of fun. Yeah. So there you go. There's your just a little bit of announcement. I think it's going to be certainly a super cool event. Seeing vintage played, seeing what Kenji does in the booth should be definitely be a good time.
Yeah. So, and looking towards our next match, I'm going to be battling Chris here, and I tried to get things started with a little bit of trash talk earlier today, so we'll see how that pans out. I'm more than willing to look foolish if I do lose. I think it's all in good fun.
Totally agree. Twitter was more entertaining this afternoon because of you. Absolutely. So yeah, your match against Chris Pakula coming up next. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. More Vintage Super League coming up momentarily.